this whole Ben Johnson situation at West Ham has become one that's quite frustrating, I find, to stand back and keep watching in terms of how the club are dealing with it. And it's been going on, let's be honest, for quite some time now, best part of 2 years, really, in the fact that we've been unable to agree a new contract with the player. The club have always sort of maintained the stance of that he's asking for too much money. We can't pay this sort of wage. But he's not asking for extortionate money. In fact, he's actually asking for a very modest Premier League player's salary. And that is what he is. He's a Premier League footballer. Is he the best player at the football club? No, definitely not. But he's also. But is he useful? And is he someone that we should be keeping? I think so, definitely. I don't understand our view on this as a football club, West Ham. I really don't. I think that it's such a short-sighted view, and it's one that's hampering the club. It's been hampering us for quite a while. This has, and this is not just for Ben Johnson. We've seen this happen time and again with certain players, where we've been simply unable to provide them with a package that suits them and their agent or whatever for them to remain at the football club. We seem to struggle with it. My feeling is that what tends to keep happening is that we've got players on small salaries. We had it with Declan Rice. Very similar. This happened with Declan Rice before, where the club was so strong in their view that it could have actually cost us. We could have lost him earlier. We actually had to eventually cave in, and the only reason the club caved in was because of how well Declan had progressed. And that's the only reason that they were able to offer him a wage that was sufficient enough for him to sign a new deal with the club. And then, let's be honest, we could have had Rice longer. The reason we didn't is because we took too long in coming to the table with an offer which would have matched what he was asking for. But when it comes to Ben Johnson, he falls in the category of the other sort of players where basically they're on a lesser wage, they're on an academy wage. They all of a sudden then want to go up to a Premier League wage. And because the jump is so big, the club just simply won't do it. They're just looking at it as a percentage increase. So effectively they're saying, well, hang on a minute, he wants a 200% increase. We can't do that. That's what David Sullivan's seeing, rather than looking at the bigger picture. And it's costing us. And it's about to cost us again. Because Ben Johnson's going to leave the club this summer. XWH employees provided an update on it, and we reported on this previously that it was looking likely that the player was going to leave. Well, now it's looking all but certain that the player will be leaving the football club. And I can't get over that we've actually allowing this to happen. Now, as I've said straight away, but I want to make this very clear, I'm not suggesting that Ben Johnson leaves his club, then all hell breaks loose, and we're going to collapse and be relegated. I'm not suggesting that, but what I am suggesting, and I think is fair, is that we are about to lose a really useful player, not just in terms of what he can offer our team, but also to have around the club. Ben Johnson has been at West Ham since he was 8 years old. 8 years old, a West Ham boy from East London, who's worked his way up from a young boy and worked his way all the way up to being a Premier League player. He has proven this season to be a really useful squad player. There's not many players that can play at right back, left back, centre back, midfield, and on the wings. There's not many players that can do that. We know that. That's not just at West Ham, that's in the Premier League. That's why it's absolutely no surprise that there are now clubs all circulating wanting Ben Johnson's signature, including now Tottenham Hotspur, who are showing a really strong interest in bringing him to take him to North London. I cannot get over why West Ham are so reluctant to pay him a Premier League salary. I don't understand why. I just do not get it. Because for a fact now, let's put it this way. If West Ham were, let's say, to let Johnson go, and then we go, we need a replacement him, And let's imagine that someone exactly like Johnson is at his age and could do what he could do. How much would you be paying him? 40, 50 grand a week. And we would go and do that. And not only would we go and spend that, but we'd also pay for the transfer fees, agent fees to get the deal over the line. But yet you've got the player here now, an academy boy here now. And I keep saying boy, he's not a boy anymore, is he? And we're not willing to just up his wage. That's all West Ham needed to do, was to just come to the table to get him a better deal. Ben Johnson wasn't asking for 150 grand a week. If that had been the case, if Ben Johnson, let's say 150, let's say Ben Johnson was asking for 85 grand a week, I can understand the club going, that's quite steep. And I would agree with that. I would say, yeah, I think that's a little bit too much. I think for what you can provide the club, which is being a really useful player, that someone that can come in, could become a first team player. We've seen it before a few times this season, in fact, where we've gone, do you know what? I actually prefer to see Johnson play this week. Do you know what I mean? He's cemented himself that well. And when he's come on and been called upon. But yet, we're willing to let him go. We're willing to let him go. I don't get it. I'm absolutely baffled by the decision making at this football club. Sometimes it really does leave you wondering what the thought process is, how short-sighted we are at times. Won't play Ben Johnson 40, 50 grand a week, but willing to pay Danny Ings 100 grand plus. And that's not even a dig at Danny Ings, by the way. That's not his fault. But you can see my point. Like my point was a minute ago, like the fact that I can see us then going to market to go and buy a player that can fill in and do what Johnson's been doing. Which, by the way, as I said, how many players can do that? Can be a hybrid player that can play in loads of different positions. There isn't many about. What are you going to be paying him then? Really, really sad. But X has provided an update on it, as I said. So the update is that Ben Johnson will be leaving this summer. That is looking all but certain now. He will be leaving. He will not sign a deal because he's got a deal in place. And thankfully, anyway, it's not great news either way, but thankfully it's not with Tottenham, as far as we understand it. It looks as though the deal to Crystal Palace is all but done. And the player will be going to Crystal Palace next season. He's going to get a nice signing on fee. He's going to get his Premier League salary, and he's no doubt going to get opportunities to play there. I don't blame Ben Johnson at all. I really don't. I feel really sorry for the guy. We know for a fact that he is really well liked. The players really like him. The staff really like him. The manager likes him. He's a lovely boy. He's a religious lad, so he's very well behaved. And he's from West Ham. He's a West Ham lad. He's been at our academy, came through the ranks. He's worked hard all those years to work his way into being a first-team footballer. And we're willing to let him go over a few grand a week. I think it's really poor, really sad, actually. And I'm actually gutted. I'm gutted for us as fans because I wanted to see him stay. I was really hoping that they'd come to a compromise. But I don't blame Ben Johnson and his camp. I don't. I think they've become sick and tired of being treated like this by West Ham. This dilly-dallying, this crap that they're putting in front of the table and acting as if like he's taking the piss when he's not. He's not taking the piss. He's been absolutely fair in what he's asked for. I mean, we have it in our normal day-to-day lives, don't we? You don't go into a job. Let's just say, whatever you are, a postman. They're paying 30 grand a year for a postman, 40 grand a year, whatever it is. You want to get paid that, don't you? You want the going rate. You're not walking in and saying, 100 grand a year when everyone else is earning 30. You want the going rate and what you expect. If you're earning 10, then you've got every right to say, what's going on? You know what I mean? I'm doing the same job as everybody else. Why am I not getting paid the same? And then it's your boss going, no, I'll only give you 15. I just think it's really sad. I think it's really let the club are letting themselves down here. It's another mark against Sullivan's name. This is, in my opinion, such a short-sighted way of doing things. And as I've said, I'm not seeing it as a catastrophic, oh my God, how are we going to cope without Ben Johnson? I'm not saying that. I understand he is a useful player to have around, but I'm not suggesting that the club's going to suddenly collapse without Ben Johnson being around. But I think it's a really naive move and one that I think we'll live to regret it. I really do. I think he'll go to Crystal Palace and I think he'll be a really good player for them, really useful. And I tell you what, I really hope he does. I really hope that he does well for them because it would stick it to Sullivan for that. And I hate being like that and being all aggressive towards the club. But I'm really annoyed with the situation. I think it's a really crappy one. And it's all orchestrated by ourselves. We could have dealt with this ages ago. We knew his contract was running down. Should have said to him, look, you're a useful player. I think this season he's proved it. I think this season he has more than proved that he is a really useful player to have around. So why on earth that this club feel that he's not worth 40, 50 a week? I don't know. I don't understand what they're expecting then. And quite understandably, his head's been now turned because now he's got another London club. So he hasn't got to move house. You know, he hasn't got to uproot his family. He can stay in London where he's happy and settled. And he's a West Ham boy and will stay with us. He can now go to another London club. He can earn his Premier League salary plus a few million quid in his bank as well to say, thanks for joining. How can you blame him? How could you blame him? He must be seething at how he's been treated by David Sullivan and this football club. I'd be really gutted if that was me. I'd feel so let down thinking he's been so patient as well. Do you know what I mean? He's come on and done a job. He always comes on and does a job for us. I'm not saying he's a perfect player. He's not the perfect player. He's not the best player at the football club. And as I've said, we're not going to suddenly get relegated without having Ben Johnson available. But I'll tell you what, it's a sad moment for this club that we're willing to let a young lad go for, let's be honest, the club that look at the wages we pay other players. It's minimal. It's minimal what he was asking for in terms of a pay rise. I think it's very sad. But the positive side is, from what the reports are suggesting, he's not going to Tottenham. I know that the press are sort of suggesting that's the case. Far as we understand it, though, there is a deal for Crystal Palace. And sadly, the end of this season, Ben Johnson will be departing and going south of the river.